Greetings, all you maniacs and minds on crimes, and today we're talking fiction again, and I'm going over the Dutch Angel Dragons again. Now, why? Well, it's mostly due to the fact that I'm curious about how their power of time works, because on the wiki, in their lore, it says they have the power of time. That is very vague. So, today I'm going to go over quite a few different types of time manipulation, aka chronomancy, and speculate on which one that the Dutch Angel Dragons actually have. So, the first type, first off, this is no means like 100% true of all these types. It's just speculation, and well, there's a lot of ways that time can be manipulated in fiction. Anyway, so the first sort of type is like local time manipulation. I think a good example of this is Hit from Dragon Ball Super, where he is able to create a little pocket dimension where he lags time. He stops or really slows down time, his time skip. That's the technique. Now, that is a very powerful ability, but there are characters in Dragon Ball that are able to break through it through power alone. Goku can do it, Vegeta can do it, Jiren can do it, anyone that is that powerful, if they are simply stronger, then they're going to be able to break through it, which makes them ever so slightly fourth dimensional. It's really mildly fourth dimensional in a way. Anyway, that's pretty impressive. So if a Dutch Angel Dragon has this type of time manipulation, then they will be able to stop or slow down time or skip through time on a local area. Like they would be able to effectively look like they're teleporting, but they're simply walking because they have stopped time in a small little area. But I don't think Dutch Angel Dragons have this type of time manipulation because it is stated in the lore that they are from sort of a higher plane of existence, different dimension, and all of that. So the next type of time manipulation is where a character is able to effectively move through time if time was a swimming pool and not a hallway. This is how I always like to think of time. Time to us, like a normal human, is a hallway where you can only walk forward. That is it. It is just a narrow corridor where time always flows forward. But for a fourth dimensional being, say like a Dutch Angel Dragon, the hallway is more of a swimming pool where they can move in 3 dimensions in time. I know that is really hard to wrap your head around, but think of it the way that they would be able to perceive all pasts, presents, and futures and possibilities all at the same time. I know that doesn't really help all that much, but I think it's a easier thing to understand. If a Dutch Angel Dragon has this type of time manipulation, then they are some of the most powerful characters in fiction, bar none. Not only would they be able to manipulate local time, but they would also be able to manipulate universal time. They'd be able to stop time on a massive universal scale. They'd be able to speed up time on a massive universal scale, etc. Time to them would be a plaything. It would be almost like Play-Doh. They'd be able to manipulate it however they feel like. And we couldn't do anything about it. The only characters that would be able to stop them from doing this are characters that are straight up immune to this time manipulation, or characters that can in fact manipulate time themselves. And yes, sometimes they do fall into different categories. There are some characters that are just immune to time manipulation but can't manipulate time, but there's other characters that can manipulate time but are not immune to time manipulation. Anyway, I think a character that is like this, but I think at a much more massive scale, is Chronoa, the Supreme Kai of Time from Dragon Ball Heroes. She governs time. But unfortunately, I don't really know the extent of it, but from what I've played and seen, like in Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 and 2, she basically controls all of time in multiple timelines, so that goes far beyond what the Dutch Angel Dragons do, because they only control time in at least one timeline, I do believe. It's never explicitly stated that the Dungeons and Dragons exist in multiple timelines at the same time. It's not like they're aware of it. But now, what if we go crazy? What if we go absolutely crazy? So, being able to manipulate time on such a grand scale is insane. But what if time was not just a temporal dimension, but what if it granted a spatial dimension? This is where things get wild. So, the three spatial dimensions we're used to are forward and back, up and down, left and right. We understand that. And then there's variations of that with diagonal directions. Simple. Very simple to us. However, the fourth dimension we could never perceive. We would only ever see a third dimensional slice of it. The fourth dimension, I've heard in some videos describe it as being able to go in and out. Now, whatever that means is sort of up for interpretation. What I believe it means is that you're able to go in and out of a timeline, or just a timeline that you're viewing at will. So you literally exist out of time, outside of time. So basically, what this means is not only would Dutch Angel Dragons have complete and utter omnipotence when it comes to time, they would be higher dimensional in such a way where a third dimensional being would not be able to do anything to them. You would need a character like, I don't know, Xenogoku or Xenovegeta to, be able to withstand what these Dutch Angel Dragons can do. And if you've watched my videos on Xenovegeta and Xenovegeto, you know that these characters are really, really overpowered. But we're talking about the Dutch Angel Dragons here. But either way, if they truly are higher dimensional beings, and I do believe they are, it's implied at least, that does in fact mean that they are some of the most powerful characters in fiction. When we're talking about characters that are on the third dimensional plane, if we really want to talk about powerful characters, you could say, this character's fifth dimensional, this character's sixth dimensional, this character is outerversal, in like a higher dimensional way, all that crazy crap. But if we're only talking about like third dimensional or fourth dimensional characters, they're some of the strongest. Now, this doesn't mean that I think that a Dutch Angel Dragon could, stomp a whole lot of fiction. I'm not saying they could, but they might be able to. Anyway, this is why I want, when people make fictional characters, they need to be more explicit when it comes to their powers, because it leaves a whole lot of questions and a whole lot of speculations. Just like what I've been discussing with Dutch Angel Dragons, they have the power of time. That could mean so many things, as I've discussed in this video. If they're only able to control local time, yeah, they're pretty powerful. They're definitely a big threat. Like, not a lot of characters are going to be able to withstand that for long, or even be able to defeat it. But if they truly are true fourth dimensional characters, 4 spatial dimensions and 1 of time, where they're able to manipulate time as if it were clay and being higher dimensional, then they are just simply beyond understanding. They are just simply beyond what it means to be powerful in a third dimensional way. Let me say it like this. This is no specific characters, but let me just say this. Let's say we had a third dimensional character that is literally omnipotent on third dimensions. There's no stronger. They are everything. But then they go against a fourth dimensional character. That third dimensional character is nothing. So that's just how this dimensional tiering tends to work. If you have a third dimensional character versus a fourth dimensional character, the fourth dimensional character always wins. Now you could say, what if there's some exceptions? Are there third dimensional characters that have time hacks? Well, if they have time hacks, then they're not third dimensional anymore. I'm talking just strictly third dimensions versus strictly fourth dimensions. And as I've discussed in a few videos I've done on Dragon Ball Heroes, Xenogoku and Xenovegeta at base are fifth dimensional characters. Now, this doesn't mean that they can manipulate time. They can't. Or, well, I guess they sort of can, but it's not really part of what they do. It gets really messy really quick when you start to talk about all these higher dimensional tierings. But borderline is, Dutch Angel Dragons are extraordinarily powerful fictional characters. If the creator of this species really, really wanted to, then they could definitely do a whole dimensional tier list, discuss the powers, feats, what they are capable of, and everything. And if I am understanding this lore right, since these are higher dimensional creatures, these creatures that are just simply beyond human comprehension, well, then they really are fourth dimensional. They are true fourth dimensional characters. And there's pretty much no stopping them unless you are higher dimensional or are just simply on their scale, but you like outsmart them, which I don't think is possible. But at the same time, if you can perceive all futures, then it's just going to be a never-ending battle. Basically, you'd be able to predict your opponent's move before they do it. It's basically 100% prediction. You would know certainly what your opponent would do if you could perceive all futures. Pretty insane, right? Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting, and I hope it didn't break some people's brains, because when you start talking about this higher dimensional stuff, it gets really messy half the time. But I think I condensed it fairly well. Now keep in mind, this isn't, me saying that the Dutch Angel Dragons are, exactly this. But they might as well be. If they are described, and they are described as higher dimensional beings from a dimension that is, that sees our universe as like a plane, and that their dimension is above ours, then they are definitely higher dimensional characters. So they're very powerful. I just wish that the creator of the species would be way more specific about how their powers work, their properties, their feats, busting power, all of that, power scaling goodness. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. And maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me. Since it's so vague, it's up to interpretation. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, in Trilby, we trust.